Hello. So, since it's my first video, I wanted to take a little bit of time and just introduce myself before we get to the topic. So basically, my name's Cameron, and I'm a chef from the East San Francisco Bay Area. I've been cooking for about 10 years in restaurants all around the Bay Area and in Central Oregon. And about 5 years ago, I kind of started getting into and falling in love with foraging and cooking wild foods and stuff like that. And now, over the past few years that I've been really into it, I've kind of gotten joy from it, bringing other people out, like my friends and coworkers and things like that, into nature with me, and just kind of teaching them how to identify and collect things, and learn how to take them home and cook with them and just make something delicious with them, which is kind of how I got the idea behind this YouTube series that I want to start making, where basically I'll be taking you guys out in nature with me, teaching you how to identify, collect, take it home, and cook something delicious with wild foods that grow all around us. So that's basically kind of my intro and my intent behind this video series. So with that, the first topic of the first video will be California Bay Laurel. So let's get to it. Topic of our first video, California Bay Laurel, happens to be this beautiful tree standing right behind me. I'm lucky enough to have about 7 of them in my backyard, although I did not plant them here. They're naturally occurring wild, but I'm just lucky enough to have a little oak woodland that they would love to inhabit, so that's where they're here. And yeah, so the plant goes by a few different names: California Bay Laurel, California Bay, Bay Laurel, Oregon Myrtle. Those are a few of the ones I can think of off the top of my head. It is the scientific name is Umbellularia californica, and I believe it's the only species in its genus. It's an evergreen tree, so it doesn't lose its leaves. It's green year round. It can be up to about 100 feet tall, but most of the specimens that I'd find would be about this size, which I'm about 6 feet tall, and it goes up maybe 3 or 4 feet past me. So it's about 10, 11 feet tall. It's fairly young. I've seen them maybe about 30 to 60 feet tall, but I've never seen the 100-foot tall ones, although I'm sure it's beautiful. When it's young, the tree can have this smooth gray bark that you see here. It's not really peeling or anything, and it doesn't really have any texture to it. It's very smooth and pretty. As the tree ages, it can get this reddish brown color as well as a scaly texture to it. The leaves, as you can see here, are kind of similar to the European bay leaves that you'd see in the store, but they're smooth edges, slightly elongated, and a little bit thinner. So the average leaf is 2 to 4 inches long and about a ½ inch to 1.5 inches wide. The tops are this smooth, waxy green that's a little bit darker, and on the underside it's more of a matte and lighter green. And if you pick off a leaf, if you tear it and you smell it, it gives off the scent of almost like eucalyptus or camphor, but it's much sweeter and, in my opinion, more appetizing. That's why I kind of came up with the idea for the recipe that I'm going to show you guys later, because of the sweetness. But sorry, I have to look at my notes. This is my first video, so bear with me. You can basically substitute for this California bay leaf for the European bay leaf in any recipe you could think of. The only thing you have to be diligent about is watching the amount that you put in, because this has a much more intense flavor. So on average, I would say one of these fresh leaves is probably equivalent to 10 European dry leaves. So if a recipe calls for 3 bay leaves of the traditional, probably only put half of one of these. But mix it up and see how you like it, and just play with the flavors, because it's what you do in cooking. But I think it's delicious, and so many other people agree. California bay leaf or California bay laurel, also produces a fruit. It's a small green berry-looking fruit with a nut on the inside. It's actually kind of reminiscent of like a small avocado, which I guess kind of makes sense because apparently the Umbellularia genus is closely related to the Persea genus, which is what the avocado is. And so yeah, it kind of makes sense. But it looks like a mini avocado, and you break it open. Instead of the pit of the avocado, it's like a small nut. And the berries ripen from around October to November, and the nut is actually really interesting because a lot of people, I've never personally used it because I don't drink coffee or tea or anything really, but essentially you take that nut, you crack it open and you roast it, and then you grind it up and you make a drink with it like you would coffee or something like that, and it's supposed to have a pretty strong stimulant effect, and it's supposed to taste delicious as well. But again, I don't really use stimulant drinks, so I've never tried it, but many people have told me it's delicious. So I'll probably, once it's in season, I'll probably circle back around and make another video about that just to cover all my bases. But sorry, let me find my place here. Oh, so basically this tree is found from central southwest Oregon all the way down into about southern California, into about Orange County. So it stops before you'd go into Mexico. You'd find it in coastal regions at sea level, in like redwood forests or like oak woodlands, all the way up to I think around 3,000 to 4,000 feet in the like foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. And usually where I find them is in like kind of riparian areas where there's like rivers and just very high moisture content year round. And other than that, I find them in like the coastal redwood forests, in these very hilly regions or like sloped regions that lead into like a water source, like a little river or a creek or something like that. And so I don't know if you can see here, but my backyard is actually on a very large slope, so it's kind of exact, and it leads down to a creek, so it's kind of exactly what the kind of region that I'm describing. So another kind of interesting fact about this tree is that it is one of 2 trees in California that is the host for the pathogen that causes the sudden oak death, which is kind of a disease that affects all of the oak trees here in California. And the other tree that carries it is called tan oak, which is actually a tree that I will end up teaching you guys about once I take you out mushroom hunting in the fall in the coastal redwood forest, because that tree is very important for mycorrhizal mushrooms. But that'll be another video for another day. So with that intro, I'm going to take you guys back to the kitchen and show you how to cook something delicious with this California bay laurel. Alright. Hello. Today the recipe I'm going to be showing you guys to utilize your foraged California bay leaves is making a classic panna cotta. So to make that, you're going to need 2 cups cultured buttermilk, 2 cups heavy whipping cream, 3/4 ounce or 1 envelope of gelatin, powdered gelatin, 3 tablespoons cold water, 1 teaspoon fine grained sea salt, 3/4 cup sugar. It can be any kind of sugar as long as it's granulated. 12 California bay leaves. You're going to be using a small amount of vanilla, so I just have this vanilla extract, but you're more than welcome to use a vanilla pod if you have them. I just don't have any at home right now. Going to be using some sort of fresh fruit as well. It can be fruit, berries, whatever you'd like. We're just going to macerate a little bit of that at the end to put on top of the panna cotta when it's ready. As far as utensils, all you'll need is some sort of vessel. Doesn't have to be a bowl, just large enough to fit all the panna cotta in once it is ready to be portioned. Some sort of strainer, small to medium saute pan or pot, whisk, ladle, and 8 to 10 some sort of small container. It doesn't have to be glass, it can be plastic or metal, but I'm just going to be using this today because this is what I have. But the ideal size is around 4 to 5 ounces. But yeah, so let's get started. So the first step to making your panna cotta is you're going to want to take your small pan and put it to about like a low, medium, high. I have my pan at 6. Then you're going to add your 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. 3/4 ounce of sugar, or 3/4 cup of sugar, excuse me. Give a little whisk. And then you're going to take all of your bay leaves and just snap them in half as you put them in. And what I find this helps do is, because you're not going to be cooking it for a very long period of time, we're basically just bringing it up to temperature so that the sugar dissolves, and that it also helps us dissolve the gelatin in there later. That it's going to help all the bay leaves infuse into this and make it taste delicious, which is what you want. So once you have all your bay leaves in there, go and just give another stir. And basically, you're going to let this go for around 10 minutes, just till it comes up to a simmer right under a boil and all the sugar is dissolved into the cream. And so give it a stir about every 60 seconds or so, just to see that things are dissolving and things aren't getting stagnant, and check back in about 10 minutes. So while you have your cream on the stove, sugar's dissolving, the leaves are infusing into the cream, you have a little bit of time. You're going to take your cold water and your gelatin. Make sure you have either a small whisk, or I'll just use a fork when I do this all the time. And you're just going to take your gelatin powder, dump it into your cold water, and just give it a couple good stirs just so it starts to dissolve. And then once you see all that gelatin in there starting to dissolve, you just leave it. And in about 5 minutes, all of that gelatin will have absorbed into the water, and it will be fine to put into our cream. So now that our cream has come just to about a simmer and all the sugar is dissolved, we're going to turn the heat off, remove it off heat, and then we're going to take our gelatin mixture that is now set over the past 10 minutes and just scoop that right into the cream. And now what we'll do is find that gelatin mixture with your whisk and just kind of break it up into your mixture. And right now, we're just stirring to dissolve the gelatin. Once the gelatin is all dissolved, and you will not feel it anymore, it just dissolves pretty easily. You're just going to let it sit. And what you're doing now is just letting the temperature drop a little bit before we add our buttermilk and our vanilla and whatnot. So yeah, let this sit for about 5-6 minutes, and I'd say same thing as before, stir it about every 60 seconds just to help release a little bit of the steam. Yeah, check back in 5 or 6 minutes. So it's been about 6 minutes, and our mixture is still warm, but definitely not hot. There's not really steam coming off of it anymore, and if I wanted to, I could stick my finger in there and it have no effect on me at all. And you should be able to do the same. And so now what we're going to do is slowly whisk in our buttermilk. Just get that all mixed in. Then we're going to add our 1 teaspoon of salt. And there's not really measurement to this, but I don't know, maybe another teaspoon of vanilla. Mix all that in. And once everything is consistent, you don't really see any breaks in the color anymore, then to take our bowl with our strainer, or whatever you have, whatever your vessel is, and strain our liquid into it. And now we are ready to portion the panna cotta. So when it comes to portioning your panna cotta, there's not really any one way to do this. If you have a vessel that's like a large measuring cup or something like that, like a pitcher that you could just pour into, you can portion that way. I'm not fortunate enough to have one of those, so I have my large mixing bowl with a ladle. But the name of the game is just filling up the containers as much as you would like to eat. I like to do little single portions, pretty close to the top, because I just put a little bit of fruit on them. But you know, if you wanted to, you could put all these into one giant cup and eat them yourself, and you know, no one will judge you because that's what you want to do. But I like to do this, and I'll probably eat like 3 or 4 of these, and then probably give 3 or 4 of them away. And so I will usually do these like 8 to 10 small ones, And then I will pour the rest into one big one for myself. So I'm a little bit gluttonous. So, almost done here. I actually don't think I'm going to have a ton left over out of this batch. Might just all go to the cups, which is totally fine also. And yeah, so I have a little bit left over. I'll put that one for myself later. But essentially now all we're gonna do is cover with plastic, put into the fridge for a minimum of 8 hours, but best is about 12 to 24. But you could try after 8 and just see how they are. And so I actually didn't get any bubbles here, which I'm really happy about. And so if you see any like little small ones like that, you can just pop them. But if yours starts to froth up when you're mixing it and you get a lot of bubbles on the surface, one thing you can do is you can take a torch, like for making creme brulees or something like that, or even just a small torch lighter that you'd use at home to light candles or whatever, and just lightly touch all those bubbles with the torch. And what that'll do is just pop all of them so that when this sets in the fridge, it doesn't have bubbles and little caverns on the top. It's just all nice and smooth. So I'm going to pop this in the fridge and then we will check back in tomorrow and see how they turned out. Hello guys. So it's been about 24 hours and our panna cotta is set and it looks beautiful. I don't know if you can see it has a slight jiggle to it. You can touch the surface. It's just a little soft and bouncy. It's not sticking to your finger or anything, but yeah, it looks great. You could tilt it if you wanted to. It's not going to come out. It gives a little sag, but you're fine. This is my preferred way to make a panna cotta, which is basically just setting it in a container and then eating it out of the container because I'm lazy at home. But if you guys wanted to do like a more classic version where you would flip it out onto a plate, you could use the same container or you could use a slightly taller, skinnier container with straight edges. And basically all you're going to do before, same exact process, but before you'd pour the panna cotta into the molds, you would just spray it with non-stick spray. So very simple. And then once it would set like this, you could take an offset spatula and just kind of gently break the seal on the very edge of the panna cotta and then flip it out onto your mold. I'll probably end up making another video about that, just with a different flavor for another video, but yeah. So let's move on to making our topping. So for the topping, it's very simple. All I have is some fresh sliced strawberries, but you can really use any fruit, berry, anything that is in season and you want to eat. And then just some, I have organic cane sugar, but you can use any sugar you want. And for just like a small amount like this, maybe use just barely a tablespoon and just sprinkle it over. And then kind of mix the fruit in just so it fully coats everything. And then you leave it for about 20 minutes. And what this is doing is you're just macerating the fruit with sugar. It's going to pull all the liquids out of the strawberries and it'll be a nice delicious topping for your panna cotta. So we'll check back in at 20 minutes. Hello. So it's been about 20 minutes and I don't know if you guys can see it, but this strawberries have kind of kicked out like a little syrup in the bottom of that, and they're just kind of glazed, so they're nice and fresh and crunchy still, but they're nice and sweet and delicious. So let's take our panna cotta, and this is really however the hell you want to do it. I'm just gonna put them all on there, and then the syrup, just get it everywhere. Now finished our process to make our delicious California bay leaf panna cotta with fresh local strawberry compote. Enjoy!